an app file, but there's a requirements, yeah, that's right, a requirements file, right? That basically go in and you say, okay, so this is my development environment, but then as soon as I move into my production environment, take all of this testing stuff that I've had in my development environment, the logging, all of that kind of stuff, throw that aside and now create my production environment with only these packages, right? Those types of practices create real problems, right? And so this is one of the architectural principles, keeping your development environment, your test environment, and your production environment as close to the same as you possibly can. That's just a great architectural principle, and it's going to solve a lot of complexity issues within the development team. So I purposefully left the 12-factor application small here. You guys can go out and take a look at it yourself. There's a lot more detail in under 12factorapp.net that will give you a lot of ideas in terms of what those 12 factors are. They marry up very well with microservices. And so I think that it's definitely a good place to start, but I would only use it as a draft. I'd take a look at it and try to apply it to your own organization. The other thing I wanted to touch on just briefly is if you do any research on microservices, you're inevitably going to run into Martin Fowler. Martin Fowler is a guru in the industry. I would never argue with him in public. But there are a couple of things that in terms of a pattern for implementation on microservices that I would take umbrage with. So Martin Fowler has come out with a thought process that you create microservices. You first create a monolith. You create your monolithic application or your monolithic system. And then after you understand the system, after you're using the system, then you start to break it down into microservices, right? Now, yeah, exactly right. So, exactly right. Number one, you'll never get there, right? You never ever get there. And that's a real problem. And then to me, the next problem that I have with it is that kind of relegates microservices to a deployment concept, not to a software development in an organizational concept. And I'm much more interested in the organizational aspects of it and the efficiency of it. And so what I say is tackle the hard things first, which is how do I set up my organization for it? How do I set up my tooling for microservices? And then how do I start to create my microservices? Once you do that, if everything is going correctly, you should be able to move responsibilities from one service to the other fairly easily. If you go through it and you decide that refactoring is in order because this service isn't quite right, as long as you have your processes and your organization and your tooling set up properly, you should be able to move those things around fairly efficiently. And so what I would say personally is that the monolith first pattern for implementation is just a bad idea, especially for smaller companies. I mean, if you're a smaller company, I would say go with the microservices first. Think about that as a first-class citizen rather than trying to implement afterwards. Okay. So now let me go back up to process a little bit. So process. I'm a process geek, and if I get into a religious argument over software development or software engineering, it's usually around process because, quite honestly, I don't think that we give it nearly enough thought or priority. So this is one of the legs of the stool for me, right? I have kind of a provocative comment up here. That is, agile methodologies such as Scrum and SAFe. Do all of you use some form of agile methodology? Probably Scrum. Does anybody use SAFe? Does anybody use Kanban? Ah, excellent, excellent. What I'll tell you is that agile methodologies in and of themselves are not a continuous process, and I think that continuous processes for microservices go kind of hand in glove, right? It's an important concept, and you should be able to do something very continuous. But most agile methodologies, by their very nature, are not continuous, they're incremental. Now, the increments may only be 2 weeks, but they're incremental. And by and large, what ends up happening is people save those increments until they can do a release. And the release schedule stays the same. A quarter, every half a year, right? So the release schedule stays the same, but their development schedule gets broken down into 2-week increments, right? That's not a continuous process, that's an incremental process, right? There's nothing wrong with that, if that's the way that your organization works. But in order to take advantage of microservices, it should be continuous, and continuous to release. Now that's going to scare a lot of people, and definitely it would have scared me as a manager and an executive of the development team, right? It would have scared the heck out of me. But honestly, I've seen the benefits of it. I've seen what people can do when they're releasing on a continuous basis. It's absolutely amazing when you start to unleash the power of the developer. So I believe very strongly that you implement a process that's as agile as your organization will allow you to, right? So if it's 2 weeks, 2-week increments, great. If it's 1 week, great. If it's, a quarter, you guys probably need to bring somebody in, right? But you get the idea, right? And then my other recommendation is modify the process to make sure that it includes concepts of continuous development and continuous release. Kanban to me is probably the best way to go in doing that. Kanban, I think, and if you guys have not read this book, Actionable Agile by Dan Vacanti, I would suggest it all day long. It's really a great book.
So, in regards to continuous releases,
yeah,
how do you balance that with stability? And I've got a single anecdotal data point on this.
Yeah.
One of our competitors, we sell software for people to develop software. We sell software libraries. One of our competitors has moved to a weekly release cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And our customers are not at all happy about it because it can't stabilize. And they feel that the quality's going down.
Yeah.
So how do you balance a continuous release process with quality control?
Yeah, so quality control, I think is the easier part of it. I mean, it sounds to me like there's a quality control problem, with the software, with the process, right? So the quality control part of it is easier. The stability part of it, from the standpoint of introducing change to a customer, is the bigger issue, right? That is a huge issue, and there's a lot of companies that you cannot be releasing, changes to a customer, every week. You just can't do it. You have to do it every quarter. You have to do it, because they won't be able to keep up with you, right? So yeah, absolutely agree. What I will say is that for a lot of web-based architectures or service-oriented, SaaS-based applications. That's one of the reasons why I say that microservices kind of flow hand in glove, right? There are patterns that you can use to keep the facade fairly stable, right? And that's oftentimes what you want to do, but allow the features and the functionality underneath to change, and keep up with your development teams. I don't know that I could solve your problem if you guys are shipping software. Right? Because absolutely agree.
We do it quarterly because our customers demand some stability.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I would say is, again, that's probably why I put this up here right now. I mean, there's no magic, there's no silver bullet to it, right? Go as agile as your organization will allow. But if if you're a SaaS-based company and you know, and you have the ability to roll out features nightly, right? So, okay. All right. So let me then go back to and yeah. You guys can tell that I'm passionate about this. I said it was going to be 30 minutes. It's now 45.
That was without question.
And I'm not even slowing down, right? All right. So, so the other part of it then is the tooling, right? So we've talked a little bit about Google Kubernetes. We've talked a little bit about Docker. I'm going to throw kind of a shameless promotion in here as well. We're going to talk a little bit about the platforms and Digital Garage, what we're doing. But first of all, I want to talk about Docker. We've had some folks in here that are very familiar with Docker. Docker is a great tool. It's basically it's a container specification, very much like Rocket. Actually, I should say Rocket is much like Docker. But basically, it's for lightweight Linux containers that kind of give you your own little virtual space for a service or an application or something along those lines. So it's a deployment concept. So if I've got 50 Linux servers that are distributed across a cloud infrastructure, I can use Docker to easily take images in containers and I can plot them out on that Linux server somewhere. Now, if I don't have a product like Google Kubernetes or Diego from Cloud Foundry, then I need to manage each one of those containers manually, right? That is a tremendous amount of overhead. So what Google Kubernetes does, and Diego to a certain extent right along with it, they're what we call orchestration layers or container orchestration layers. And basically what they do is they inventory and manage the containers that are sitting out usually on cloud infrastructure of some type, whether it's private cloud or public cloud. And it's allowing me to manage those individual containers, either where they're deployed or how many of a certain, how many instances of a certain service or container are deployed in a certain spot, what the networking protocols and how I route messages back and forth to them. They manage sessions. If I have to manage a session between services or between a UI and another service, that is all handled by these orchestration layers. Any question on that? Right now, what I would say in terms of the tools that are out there, all of these technologies are open source. I would say that Docker is further ahead than Rocket, although Rocket will probably catch up pretty quickly because it's very well funded.
So who's behind that?
It is Joyent. I believe it's Joyent.
I thought it was CoreOS.
Oh yeah, you're right. No, it is CoreOS. Thank you. Sorry about that. In terms of orchestration, I think Kubernetes is probably further ahead than Diego is, but that's largely because Google's been doing this for almost 10 years now. And basically on this infrastructure, it's what they internally call the Borg. And they're putting a lot of resources behind it, very much like they have with, whatever your feelings are about Angular, just very much like they have with Angular. And then in terms of DevOps platforms, which we haven't really discussed right now yet, but there's a whole lot of development operations tooling that is popping up around these concepts of either Diego and Docker or Google Kubernetes and Docker. And the DevOps platforms are really around helping ease the management of the development lifecycle. So how do I move my code base from my development environment into my test and staging environment, and then finally into production. And so they're basically a layer on top of these other tools that basically allow you to kind of move that code base through those different situations. That is what Digital Garage does. We are a platform as a service. We're built on the open source technologies of OpenShift, Kubernetes, and Docker. And so that we're just providing our application as a service. Okay? So any questions on the tooling? We haven't talked about service management, and that is an important consideration inside the tooling. And I'd like to talk more about it because obviously that is something that is extremely important. But the service management tooling that I've seen out there, although I know that there are starting to be some service management tools that are popping up from different vendors that are interesting, most of the service management stuff that I've seen out of there is basically some form of wiki. Quite honestly, which sounds kind of sad, but it's still in that state, right? Okay. Any questions on any of that?
Sure. Is your platform on hardware that you own and host, or is it on a cloud?
No, it's on a cloud. It's on a cloud platform. That's right. Yeah, yeah. We took a look at a lot of different things, and I used to be very involved with my last company in cloud infrastructure and so forth. So it was just a much better decision for us to outsource this.
So what exactly is the service you are selling?
The service that we're selling?
Yeah.
Essentially what we sell within Digital Garage is a virtual space on top of Kubernetes and Docker and so forth for software developers to come in. You can create your development environment, your staging environment, your test environment. We don't do production. We're just on the dev workflow. So essentially, you can't really see it here, and at some point in time when I'm ready to release it to the general public, I'll come in and demo it for you guys. But we have things like, where you can go in and you can upload your team, essentially, your development team. And so now each one of them has access to all of your assets, right? So that you can deploy it into your environment. You can, pull images down from Docker. If you use MySQL, whatever, you can pull it all into your environment and wire it together. Does that make sense?
So you're like a coder, code anywhere version for microservices?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great way to say it. In fact,
I know.
yeah,
Well, that's what they do.
yeah,
I
absolutely.
don't know that they do microservices, but I mean, that's
Yeah.
essentially what they do.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and I didn't want to get I don't want to get into too much into what we're doing. I'm more than happy to talk to you guys afterwards about it and get you involved with it as much as you want to be. But at some point I'll come back and I'll demo it to everybody so that you guys can see it and find out what
And
we're
you
doing.
can follow us along on that LinkedIn site, because we'll
Yeah.
send out updates on where we are, getting closer to release and stuff like that. And we'd love to have more followers, because we just got that site up there, so it'd be awesome to have
Yeah.
kind of conversation.
Not trying to whatever, but when I go over there and I try to click the digitalgarage.io website, does not work.
Oh, it doesn't?
The
Okay.
website, the actual
website
website, the website's not up.
The website is not up yet.
Right,
Okay.
that's
Yeah,
just our
yeah.
LinkedIn site.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because over there is like your company website, and that doesn't work.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
That's not right.
Yep.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
They're working
Yeah.
on it.
So how old is your company?
We started in March.
March.
Yeah.
Oh, so for months.
Yeah.
pretty
Okay.
much,
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So we won't be launching until right around the 1st of September.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how is it funded?
By me.
Great.
Yeah.
Are you millionaire?
Not anymore, right?
Not anymore. That's right. Yeah. Boats, horses, software company. Yeah. Exactly. Okay. All right. So, and very last, I just wanted to provide you guys with some, and to your point, don't go out here yet.
Yes, skip the third one for now.
but I just put that up there just in case. We will have a community website out there where I'm going to be posting articles and different things along those lines from friends and family and all those types of things on either Docker, Kubernetes, microservices. We probably will also have some things out there about specific programming languages, like Python is one of our favorites. Yeah, right, Jody?
Yeah, that's right.
Absolutely. We'll be doing a lot of that. I do suggest going out, even though I kind of bash Martin Fowler, I do suggest going out and reading some of his material. I think that he is truly a visionary in the space, and I think that it's always a good read. This is one of my favorite books, Building Microservices by Sam Newman. Sam Newman was the person who put together the real quick definition. He's from ThoughtWorks, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for him. If you get a chance to see him speak at any of the conferences or anything along those lines, he's definitely a good person to watch speak. Actionable Agile, that's Dan Baconti, and that is the Kanban stuff. Again, if you guys get a chance, take a look at his book, and that might be something that we might, at some point, we might consider, if people are interested in Kanban, of getting Dan out here to talk to the software development group. He's really a good guy, and I think he'd be more than happy to do it. And then I'd go out and take a look at 12factor.net for the 12-factor application. I'm not necessarily promoting my competition, but they've done a really good job in that particular space. And I think that if you guys don't have a set of architectural principles like that you can paste on everybody's cubicle or paste on your own wall, that's a great place to start. Okay.
Did you say you were going to make this presentation available somewhere?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So we'll have it on the Meetup site, like we'll send it around to the group, and we'll have it on that LinkedIn site as well. So, a couple
Good.
options.
All right. Wow. Yeah, 30 minutes. All right. Any questions, guys? Anything I can answer for you?
I have a vague question, I
Yeah.
guess. Do you have, and I'm just curious about your product, but cloud service provider agnostic? That concept of being able to switch between them?
Being able to switch between cloud service
Or not
providers.
even caring who it is?
Yeah.
Is that a solved problem here too? Because at least last time I really looked at it, it wasn't. You were locked in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so within platform as a service, you're not going to find anybody that really allows you to choose your infrastructure as a service provider, your cloud service provider. What I will tell you, one of our tenets within Digital Garage is to be open. And that for us not only means open source technologies, but I made the statement that we're only doing development environments. We're not doing production environments. We're doing that for a very specific reason. Once you develop your code and get it into Docker containers and images and so forth, and now you're ready to deploy it into production, we don't want to stand in your way. We want to be at a place where you can take that code and it's immediately portable into either the Google Container Engine, Microsoft Azure, or Amazon if you wanted to, even SoftLayer from IBM, and deploy that code on whatever. If you want to deploy it, quite honestly, on your own infrastructure, you could absolutely do it on your own infrastructure as long as you're running the Docker engine and Kubernetes, right? And so we wanted to make it available so that you can port that code. As soon as you're done with your development side, you can port it into production, and it's going to operate the same way in production that it was operating in dev. So in the platforms as a service world, we're probably the only platform as a service provider that I've seen out there that will allow you to do that. What I will tell you is that the other thing that we've done is we've tried not to modify the underlying platforms significantly, right? So if you get to a scale where the digital garage doesn't make sense for you any longer because either our infrastructure as a service provider is not correct or something along those lines, then you can spin up a Kubernetes Kubernetes platform and a Docker platform and just run it. You can run your own DevOps on your own servers as well. But we don't have the capability of choosing the underlying infrastructure as a service provider. We do allow you to choose where. For instance, do you want it in Zurich or do you want it in Sao Paulo? But we don't give you the option of spinning it up on any brand of infrastructure service provider. Thanks for hitting our Achilles heel already.
No, I'm just curious, 'cause it's, the last Amazon outage was a little bit frightening.
Yeah, oh yeah. Oh, no.
For half the planet, and we still have the same problem. I was just wondering if there was.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any movement unless you yourself just make up for it,
So that's a really good, point, and I think if we come back and talk about it again, and I'd love to do it, talk to you about geographic redundancy rather than necessarily brand, right? Because even with Amazon, it's not global. It's always the Reston data, the Virginia data center, or something along those lines, and so. That's one of the beautiful things about Kubernetes, quite honestly, is that if you spread your services out across nodes, then you get instant geographic redundancy, and Kubernetes will actually even manage the number of nodes that get spun up. So it will sit there and it'll watch whether or not let's say I've got 5 microservices over here. This is the interface for it. And you'll see I just have one pod running in each one of these. This is basically a running service. And so you can't see it very well, but I've got a couple of arrows here, and I can scale these up to, let's say 5. And I can distribute them across 5 different nodes if I want to. If one node goes down, then Kubernetes automatically understands that I need another node. So it spins up another node, or it spins up another pod on an available node. So there are ways that you can get around that. To lessen those types of things. But yeah, it's absolutely an issue, absolutely a question. Yeah.
I'm probably going down a rat hole here, but I'm just looking at your business model, and you said that you do dev and test, but you don't do prod.
Yeah.
Are you confident that the skills to deploy to prod and to get, when you're doing that hot production, you have those production problems,
Yeah.
that you're going to be able to get them back into dev and test when you're not. Anyway, I think you know where I'm going there.
I do, yeah, I do.
That to me, it just
I do.
screams like, that was, as a customer, that would scare me away.
Yeah, no, I absolutely do. I know exactly what you're talking about. What I can tell you is that moving the stuff, I think, is probably easier than most people would realize, right? Off of the code base and different things along those lines. You just kind of have to see the dev process, and you'd see that it's really not that difficult. If you've got a GitHub account, essentially, and a Docker Hub account, you can create a Docker build, right, which creates your images, and that's, you're going to test them inside of that, kind of integrated dev environment. You're going to run your tests against it, hopefully, potentially even into staging. It's not that we're concerned at all about our platform running production. I don't have any issues with that at all. I know that everything that we've got underlying the platform is really very stable and strong. What I'm concerned about right now is simply providing the level of support that an enterprise, the SLAs that an enterprise organization would expect.
Okay.
And that's my primary concern.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's my primary concern.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how will you build for this?
So that's a great question, thanks. We're building based on resource, but the resource is reserved for, you know, for whatever period of time you're actually using it. So again, you can't really see it here, but up here there's a namespace, which is basically a project, and that project has a certain number of resources associated with it, CPU, gigabytes of RAM, those types of things. So the way that we're going to do it extremely simple, because developers have a lot more things to worry about than pricing and what the invoice looks like at the end of the month. So what we're going to do is keep it extremely simple, and we're basically going to just charge on the gigabytes of RAM. That's it. So you can have as much CPU as you want, you can have as much network transfer as you want, so on and so forth. But you know, we're going to charge about 3 cents an hour per gigabyte of RAM.
There's also a dashboard built into the site where the developer can kind of monitor usage, like on a fairly close to real-time basis. What is like a 15-minute lag, something like
It's
that?
less than that, yeah,
Yeah,
maybe 15
something like
seconds.
that. But
Yeah.
so there's real good
Yeah.
accountability to the developer on what they're doing.
So I still don't fully understand what you mean by people can develop their code over there. Are you saying that they also provide some kind of cloud-based IDE that people
No.
can write code?
No.
So what the-
No,
what's
we
that
don't.
again?
We don't provide a cloud-based IDE. Although this would be more the infrastructure behind it, right? So this is where builds can happen. So for instance, if you have your IDE, you build your code, you check it into GitHub,
Okay.
right? As soon as it gets checked into GitHub, then the platform recognizes that a code
Okay,
change
so
is
it's
taking place.
something very similar to like Traverse CI.
Yes, yes, yeah. In fact, you can run Jenkins and Travis on top of this platform too, to move stuff.
So the developers still develop on their desktop.
That's right.
Type into GitHub, say, they send a message to your service, which check out things in a similar way as.
That's right, that's right, yeah, exactly right. And then, for instance, what the platform does immediately is as soon as whatever trigger you've said within GitHub, right? Let's say that whenever there's a commit or something along those lines into GitHub, that you want a build to happen. What ends up happening is the platform goes out, it grabs that bit of code, it pulls it in, it does a Docker build on it, and so it builds a Docker container right there. Then after it builds the Docker container, it spins up the Docker container, right? It basically registers it with Kubernetes. It provides the routing, the networking information around it. And this is one I'm going to geek out on you here for just a second because I love this part. So after a change occurs, it basically spins. Let's say that I was changing this one. It spins up a brand new pod, and it waits until this pod is available before it spins this one down. But as soon as that next pod is ready,